This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
It is finally that time of the year once again. The Kentucky Derby coming up on Saturday at Churchill Downs, which means it is time for our yearly chat with Christina Blacker of FanDuel TV, picking her brain on the best horses for this year's running. We're talking about journalism, the favor. We're going to talk about Christina's horse betting process and her favorite bets for this weekend down at Churchill Downs. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research. Joined here as mentioned by Christina Blacker. You can find her on X at ChristinaFDTV. She is a host, analyst, and reporter for FanDuel TV and FanDuel Racing. Christina, happy Derby week to you. How you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Happy Derby week to you as well. And thanks for having me on. It's been a really exciting last several months. You know, we count down on FanDuel TV from the very first Derby prep, which happens in September of the year prior. So it's weeks and months of buildup, of excitement. And as you get to Churchill Downs this week, there's just hundreds of people there every morning, even to watch the training. The energy and the atmosphere grows by the day. So I'm really looking forward to another big weekend coming up.
Now, you were talking about the prep races. Before we were recording, you were talking about your travel. You have been a just well-traveled person for the past couple of months, and now it all leads into this. Does that kind of help build the anticipation for you, given that you've been kind of just traversing the planet for the past couple of months?
It definitely does. And, you know, I always say, like, a good horse will take you anywhere. And that's what has happened. As you mentioned, I've been all over the world this year following horses. And I think in addition to just building with the excitement for the overall race, anytime you're on site for one of the prep races, you just learn more. You learn more about the horses. You remember more about the experience that day. Was the track playing in a certain way or favorable to certain types of styles or horses? Were there little nuances or idiosyncrasies that might have accounted for a bad performance? And maybe you're going to give that horse the benefit of the doubt coming into the Derby. So fortunately for all of us, and it's not just me, our entire team has been everywhere. I think Matt Bernier has been on a plane every single weekend. I don't know how the guy's done it, but it just gives us so much more intrinsic knowledge as you get to these weeks and days and the unmatched access and the relationships coming into a weekend like the Kentucky Derby.
And we're going to try to exploit those relationships, exploit those learnings you've had from watching those prep races by picking your brain on what you've seen. We can look at results, obviously. We want to know what you've seen from those prep races, your learnings, and how that applies to this year's race. We'll talk about all that here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast, because we are breaking down not just the Derby today. We're also going to talk Kentucky Oaks with Christina later on. Both those shows are both on the Covering the Spread podcast feed and the FanDuel YouTube page. Subscribe on YouTube, turn on notifications there, and leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you watching there as always. And check out the Covering the Spread podcast feed. Pitching Ninja going to talk some baseball with us on Covering the Spread later on this week as well. FanDuel is the first sportsbook app where you can bet the Kentucky Derby. And right now, all customers can get a no-sweat Derby bet. That means you'll get racing bonus back if your bet doesn't win. The app is super easy to use. You don't have to be a horse racing expert like Christina to get in on the Derby day action. So bet America's #1 race with America's #1 sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel for your chance at a no sweat bet for the Kentucky Derby. You must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, 18 plus and present in DC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit M&D Gambling Help Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit Gambling Helpline MA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-OPEN-Y or text OPEN-Y in New York. Opt-in required. Verified FD racing account required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable racing site credit that expires 9 days after receipt. Max refund $10 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at racing.fanduel.com. Offer not available in DC, Kansas, North Carolina, New Jersey, Tennessee, or Vermont. Churchill Downs, Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks, and the Twin Spires are registered trademarks of Churchill Downs Incorporated. Now, Christina, we've had you on here the past couple years to talk the Derby. But I'm sure for a lot of people, this may be their first time betting the Derby, maybe the first time thinking about trying to put their own process in for betting the Derby. So for those listening for the first time, what are you personally weighing to decide which horses you want to bet on for each race?
There's a lot of different factors that go into kind of choosing your Derby horse. But I think one thing that's important to remember is if you are new, these horses have all earned their way into the starting gate. So if you just have a hunch and you just want to join for fun and you're, interested in a casual manner and kind of want to dip your toe in, that's okay, because we have the years like Mind That Bird. We have the years like Rich Strike, where someone like me who's looked at the form, I could never pick that horse on top, but those horses win. It's the Derby.
Sure.
In it to win it. But my process is pretty in depth. I pay a lot of attention to the race replays, obviously. So we've, covered all these races all the way up to today or to this weekend, but I will rewatch all of them. I'll rewatch every replay and I'll watch them individually looking for each horse, because there's going to be some races, prep races, where 3 or 4 of the runners that end up in the Kentucky Derby exit the same race. So I'll watch it 4 times, and I'm only going to watch that one horse each time to sort of try and understand their trip and see if there are any reasons why maybe a victory isn't as good as it looked. Maybe they had a perfect trip. Maybe a different horse had a lot of trouble and you want to upgrade that performance. The second thing I use quite a bit is a speed figure called Thorograph. Thorograph is the speed assessment, and there's a number given to every single race. The lower the number, the better the performance. Thorograph has a tutorial online, and they actually do a seminar for free this week if you want to just listen in if you're curious about those numbers. I also use RaceLens, which is a database that houses different angles and percentages in terms of jockey trainer combinations, pedigree information, which really comes into play with the Kentucky Derby, because we're going 1.25 miles, which is a demanding distance. It's the first time all of these horses will attempt the 1.25 miles. And some horses might be really talented, but up to a mile, that last quarter mile is going to catch them, or up to 1.125 miles, that last eighth of the mile is going to catch them. So I'll look at that data to see where the moms and dads of these horses have produced other runners that can run 1.25 miles and be successful at the distance. And then lastly, I take into account a horse's demeanor and their personality, because the Kentucky Derby is unlike any other experience or race day that they are ever going to be a part of. There's 150,000 people at Churchill Downs. There's music, there's yelling, cheering, shouting. The over process from the barn to the saddling area is almost like a parade. And you bring these horses into an environment that they've never considered or they've never experienced. And you can't really prepare them, because there's no other day in racing in America quite like that. So I take a real close look at them in the morning. And a big part of that is our breakfast show, which we brought back this year. We have breakfast at the Kentucky Derby that has been running since last Wednesday, the 25th. So for 1.5 hours every morning, we're following every single horse. And all of those shows are on YouTube. If you want to jump in and go back and watch them on the FanDuel Racing YouTube channel, you can. But that's where you learn that component where if you have the athlete or the horse that ticks all the other boxes on paper, let's tick that last box between the ears. Do they have the mental fortitude to take on the atmosphere of the Derby? You need it all. You need the total package.
Yeah, and those breakfasts at the Kentucky Derby, as you mentioned, on the FanDuel Racing YouTube page, if you want to check out those and see what you can glean from that. But also, like you said, Christina, it's not just what you're seeing this week at Churchill Downs. It's also what you've seen in the lead up to the Kentucky Derby. You've been boots on the ground, watching these horses throughout this entire time. We can look at the results, obviously, but I think more importantly, what have you learned? What horses looked the part for you in the lead up to the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the opinion this year, and I think a lot of people would agree that the prep races in California and in Florida were some of the deepest. I think that's where you're going to end up. Well, for one thing, you have Journalism, the favorite, who exits California, and he has beaten every horse that's matched up against him this year, including quite a few really highly regarded horses from Bob Baffert's barn. You look at a horse from Baffert's barn by the name of Rodriguez, who's in the Derby. Journalism beat him pretty handily. Rodriguez went to New York and crushed the competition in New York. So that flatters journalism, that flatters California. I also think the prep races in Florida, like the Florida Derby, were really, really strong this year. The winner of the Florida Derby is a horse named Tapan Street. He is on the sidelines right now. He's not running in Kentucky, but the second place finisher is a horse by the name of Sovereignty. And Sovereignty has ended up as the second choice on the morning line in the Kentucky Derby. So I think he and the other horses exiting Florida are definitely coming in with some very strong form. I'm not crazy about the form from Arkansas this year. There's some very good horses there, but I think the horses in the Arkansas Derby, the pace was just wild. They went so fast early on, and the horse that ended up winning from off the pace just had a perfect setup. The other horse that's coming out of Arkansas is a horse by the name of Coal Battle. He's kind of the underdog story of this year's Derby. I love his trainer, Lonnie Briley. The guy's in his 70s. He's never had a horse like this in his career, and suddenly he's on the national stage. But back to that pedigree information I was mentioning, I don't think Coal Battle wants to go 1.25 miles. So I've kind of positioned the prep races in that regard. California, Florida, and then I see kind of New York and Arkansas is a little bit on par. The Kentucky prep races were good as well, but style-wise, some of the horses that come out of Kentucky, like a horse like East Avenue, he kind of has one way of going. He only can win on the lead, and there's so many other horses that want to be on the lead. I think he's tactically in a tough position come Saturday.
So let's talk about journalism. You mentioned coming out of California and the strong races out there. Journalism is the morning line favorite for this year's Kentucky Derby, 3-1 on the morning line there. I want to ask you, Christina, about journalism. You mentioned that they came out of California, the fact that they did so well in those races. Is that to you the deciding factor in why journalism is the favorite here? What's your read on that horse overall?
Yeah, so part one is the fact that I think he's beaten some of the best horses. You know, you look at those races in California. Part two is the speed figures that he earned in those races. And the speed figures, you are intended to be able to use those across the board to compare, you know, for example, the Beyer speed figure that he earned in the San Felipe, which was his first race this year. He earned a 108 Beyer speed figure. That's different from Thurgraph. You want a higher number. That race is the fastest race numbers wise of the entire class coming in. He backed that up with a 102 speed figure in the Santa Anita Derby. So technically a little bit slower, but he can only beat the horses that are lining up against him. In my opinion, journalism just runs as fast as he needs to get by the other horses. And whether that's the 108, whether that's the 102, whether he's capable of a 115, who knows? We'll find out. So speed figure wise, he's on top. He in the flesh this week. I mean, you could line up 100 race fans and 99 of them are going to pick him as the horse that looks the best and the horse that's handling everything the best. He's, as we say, bomb proof. Like you'd set off a bomb and just go, what was that? You know, just nothing bothers this horse. So I'm not worried about him experiencing the atmosphere come race day. He's also a horse that's trained by a very good conditioner, Michael McCarthy. Michael McCarthy, a young guy, he won the Preakness a couple of years ago with Rombauer. He worked for over a decade for Todd Pletcher, who's one of the best trainers in the game. So Michael McCarthy, great team behind this horse. He's 4 for 5 lifetime. The only time he was defeated was his career debut, and that was around 1 turn. So he's a horse that needs distance. Every time he's been able to go 2 turns, he's a winner. Pedigree-wise, top and bottom, he's bred for the 1.25 miles. I mean, he really is a significant standout in terms of his form coming into the race this year. We have a term that you call omni-fig, meaning every figure that he's run is faster than every other race that all the other horses have run. Now, for him, that's just true of 2025. If you go back into the 2-year-old season, there were a few times some of the horses were faster than him. But as far as this year goes, no one's been faster than journalism. He really does seem to have all the tools.
And it does seem like it was a good draw for journalism too on the post draw. The post draw took place over the weekend and journalism drew the 8th post there. So right in the middle. Were there any horses for you, Christina, that got bumped or up or down based on the way the post draw broke for them this weekend?
I don't think there's any major winners or losers, but there's a few things that I did take note of. Citizen Bull, the one horse from the inside post, I think the one post is always a little tricky. You're very committed because if you consider the starting gate, there's 20 horses. And as you come away from the gate, if you don't show speed, it's like an accordion. They're all going to close over on top of you and you get swallowed up in that pace and you can get shuffled back. And if you're a horse like Citizen Bull who wants to be on or near the lead, that's pretty tough. So he's going to be committed. He has to go. He has to pop the gate and basically try to take the lead from that point. The other horse that I thought was also a little bit unlucky was the horse all the way to the outside in Owen Almighty, because he's a horse that has shown so far that he can only win on the lead. If Owen Almighty is going to get to the lead, he's really going to have to send to clear all 19 other horses to his inside. And then you combine those two strategies. Now what happens? Now Citizen Bull from the rail, who wants the lead, Owen Almighty all the way from the outside, who also wants the lead. Those two are going to basically triangle towards each other on the front end. And anybody else that might have had designs on making the early lead is going to have to try to wedge themselves in between those two. I think we're going to have a very hot pace in the Derby this year. We did a handicapping show yesterday that will also end up on YouTube. It was a handicappers preview show. Caleb Keller was with me. Matt Bernier was with me. And they both made the point that there's about 4 horses in this group that have only won if they are gate to wire performers. So all 4 of those horses have the same intention. And for that reason, you might end up with a really hot pace this year because everybody has to ride their own race. You have to use your best weapon. And if speed is your weapon, then you got to go for it.
Are there horses that you think could struggle with that fast pace, given that it is a longer length and things like that? Do you think that race shape is a positive or a negative for any horses in this race?
Well, for those speed horses, yeah. I think for Citizen Bull, I think he wants to be on the lead, but I don't think he wants to be sending the whole time and using himself.
Sure.
For the same thing to be said for Owen Almighty from the outside. You have not Burnham Square, you have East Avenue in their kind of mid-pack. He's a horse that I think down the line, if we're talking next year and we're talking Breeders' Cup, I just think he hasn't quite mentally caught up to his physical ability. But what he's doing right now is kind of running off on the lead. He's too good to sit in his barn on Derby Day, but I think the speed might cook him a little bit too. I think he's going to get out there and get too aggressive. The only horse that I think capable of being involved in the speed duel and finishing his race and keep on going and actually winning it is Rodriguez, the 4 horse. He also exits Bob Baffert's barn. He's that horse that ran behind Journalism, shipped to New York. He won the Wood Memorial by 3.5 lengths. He was very comfortable out there, and he has a very fast late pace figure, meaning he finishes his races just as strong as he starts. So with Rodriguez, I think he's capable of going pretty quick, and then he has that stamina to finish on the lead if he needs to.
So you talked about Rodriguez, and you talked about a couple other horses that could be potential challengers for Journalism this year. It sounds like you believe that Journalism deserves to be the favorite, as they are at 3-1 as of right now. You'd also alluded to Sovereignty at 5-1, Sandman is 6-1. Which horses, Christina, in your mind, had the best chance to challenge Journalism for the win on Saturday?
I definitely think Sovereignty. I went back and forth between Journalism and Sovereignty, and these are the first 2 choices, on the morning line. So it's not anything earth-shattering in terms of kind of uncovering a horse. But with Sovereignty, what I started to worry about is that he's getting a little warm in the mornings. He's starting to get kind of hot and nervous. And I just have a concern that the atmosphere on Derby Day is going to get to him. The positive with that Sovereignty has that Journalism does not is that Sovereignty has run at Churchill Downs before. In his 2-year-old season, he won a stakes race. And I think visually of all of his races, it's actually the most impressive. Maybe not the fastest on speed figures. He's gotten bigger, better, stronger this year at 3. But he won by 5 lengths, and he won really convincingly. And I think he really likes it here. This is home for him. Bill Mott has trained out of the same barn at Churchill Downs for 45 years. And this is just the next horse into his program. Bill Mott is a Hall of Famer. And we interviewed him on the breakfast show the other day. And he said, I've run a lot of horses in the Derby, but this is probably my shortest price and my best chance. And from experience like that, and from a trainer with such wisdom to kind of put that out there, that's a lot of confidence. So I think you definitely have to consider Sovereignty. For me, because I have to give my selection now, it's going to be Journalism. But on the day, I'm going to watch Sovereignty. And if he's looking great, and if he is handling things, and if he's 8-9-1, which I think could be possible, because some other horses are going to take money just from the casual fans, maybe not on form, then yeah, at the last minute, I would absolutely make a win bet on Sovereignty if he gets all the way through the paddock and the post parade and is handling himself well. Burnham Square is another horse that you have to take a look at. He's the 9 horse. Brian Hernandez Jr. was the jockey that won both the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby last year. Burnham Square is another horse that is just coming around at the right time. He won the Bluegrass last time out. I have no problem with the distance for him. He's pretty athletic. He'll be rallying from off the pace. Great connections. He's quickly developing. Was a little green in the early stages of this year. He has some form where you're a little disappointed, like the Fountain of Youth and Gulfstream, he was 4th. He was beating 3 lengths. He just didn't show up that day. So he's not as reliable as a journalism, but he has races on his form that are good enough to win it. And then there's one kind of wacky horse that I like, and that's the 3 Final Gambit. He is 30-1 on the morning line. But I'll play him in trifectas. I'll play him in superfectas. I'll play him underneath. He's never run on dirt. He's only run on synthetic racing surfaces in all 4 of his starts. But he looks fantastic. He's training really well. And he is by a sire by the name of Not This Time. Not This Time, for my money, is the most versatile stallion we have in horse racing. Last year, he was the sire of both the fastest marathon dirt horse and the fastest turf sprint horse. So I don't think there's anything that a son of Not This Time can't do. So for me, a lot of people are going to shy away from Final Gambit because he's never run on dirt. But with that pedigree, it could really go either way. So why not give him a shot? Because it is the Kentucky Derby and he's 30-1.
And volatility is not a bad thing. If you are getting compensated that volatility via a long number, and 30-1, you are kind of getting that. So I think that in this situation, Christina, that uncertainty actually kind of plays into your favor, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have those statistics behind you with the pedigree, then, it's about that win probability in your own mind. And in my mind, he's less than 30-1 in terms of what, he could do on the racetrack. If everybody else is going to ignore him, that's fine by me. If he wants to go up to 40-50-1, I'll take it.
Okay, so that is, again, Final Gambit, the 3 horse, 30-1, Burnham Square, 12-1, and Sovereignty, 5-1. You've had a lot of time at Churchill Downs in the past. Have you seen horses who have had that kind of temperamental concern initially, who have kind of come through it and improved as the week has gone along? Is that kind of what you're riding on here with Sovereignty? Is, okay, I've seen horses overcome this in the past, or maybe they were a little bit sketched out early on, but improved. Have you seen that improvement previously, kind of giving you hope that Sovereignty can potentially overcome that for this year?
Yes. But I've also seen it go the other way too.
Sure,
I've seen other horses where I'm like, wow, that horse looks great. And then they lose their mind when they're walking over with thousands of people. So yes, I have seen it. And something to remember about horses, their brains are obviously different than ours. They don't compartmentalize things the way we do. So a horse that has walked by the same tree every single day for 30 days by the barn, on a windy day when that tree is shaking, suddenly they don't think it's the same tree and they're afraid. So anything you can do to put a horse through a routine that they can hopefully expect is going to be helpful. As I mentioned, you can't totally replicate Derby Day, but you will see a horse like Sovereignty will probably go to school every day this week. Bill Mott will train him in the morning and then he'll take him over to the races in the afternoon. We're running today at Churchill. We're running tomorrow. We're running Friday. We ran yesterday. You can go over on race afternoon and just have kind of a walk in the paddock, a walk by the fans. The atmosphere does slowly build this week. So each and every time that you can start that routine early with a horse that might need the extra schooling, the better. And with a horseman like Bill Mott, like a Hall of Famer, you'll see that. He even sent him out of his barn a little bit early a couple days ago, just because the crowd was big by the training track entrance. So why don't we go out there and just stand for a minute, exercise a little bit of patience, and then start our training routine. All those little lessons really add up come Derby Day.
And that experience at Churchill Downs does matter too as well. So again, Sovereignty, 5-1, interesting there for Christina. All right, Christina, as mentioned, no sweat bet at FanDuel for this week for the Kentucky Derby. Not considering the no sweat bet aspect, because obviously there's different strategies when you're talking about a no sweat bet. But for you, who is the bet to win the Kentucky Derby this week based on the morning line odds?
Well, it's going to be journalism for me because you have, such a large win pool in the Derby. I think it was over $70 million last year. You're still going to end up with a pretty good price on a horse like journalism. I don't know that he goes any lower than 5-2 plus 250, maybe 2-1. I mean, I'd be very surprised if he was any lower than plus 200. And for sports bettors, that's a pretty good bet, right? Like, you're not obviously often getting that kind of a price for a race that's going to take less than 2 minutes. Why not just go for it? You're not waiting or sweating through a 3-hour game. There's so many other ways to also use the Derby to your advantage. We put together, do you remember those old school kind of Venn diagrams from high school where you show the circles and all the other kind of overlaps? With the Kentucky Derby, there are so many wagers that play into it. You have an Oaks Derby double. You have a pick 3 that ends in the Derby. You have a pick 3 that starts in the Derby. You have pick 5 sequences. You can use a favorite to your advantage if you like them and if you feel strongly enough about them. One of our colleagues, Jose Contreras, put together this amazing graphic the other day talking about the exacta in the Derby. And his point was, it's not always a bad thing to like the favorite, because in the last 13 years, the favorite in the Derby has run first or second 10 times. Rather than taking, let's say, $40 and betting it to win in place on that favorite, use that same $40 and bet the exacta where you key the favorite first to all, and then you key all to the favorite. A couple of years ago, when Epicenter, the favorite, finished second and you had a big price on top, that exacta returned $2,000. That's so much more money than you're going to get back on your win place bet for Epicenter. So if you like journalism, mask that opinion into a few other pools, into the exacta, into the trifecta, into the superfecta, if you like, and then find the other prices below. And you can really turn a little into a lot if you're betting smart.
All right. So think about all the different ways you can bet things. There are obviously advantages to horse racing where you can, be creative and kind of know all those ways you can bet them. And what better way to learn than by watching FanDuel TV and watching Christina Blacker and all of her great colleagues over there throughout this week at Churchill Downs. Also find Christina on X at Christina FDTV. Now, you had teased a little Kentucky Oaks talk. We're going to talk about that later today, both on Covering the Spread and on the FanDuel YouTube page. But Christina, I appreciate the time to start things off for today. As always, awesome insights throughout the entire show. Going to be a fun week. I appreciate the time. Good luck to you this week. We'll talk to you again later on today to break down the Oaks.
Thank you. Sounds good.
All righty. Again, she mentioned you can find those Breakfast at the Derby videos. Those are on the FanDuel Racing YouTube page. Check out those, but also check out FanDuel TV throughout this entire week and find Christina on X at Christina FDTV. I am on X and Blue Sky at Jim Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, and Carolyn McLeod for their work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin and Carolyn, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you if you're betting the Derby. We'll talk to you once again later on today to break down the Kentucky Oaks. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.